Good afternoon, everyone. We were tasked to do the presentation for Act of Killing. Jared, everyone. The director Joshua Oppenheimer went to Indonesia to do a documentary about the massacres that occurred there during the 1960s, 1966, 1965, and he interviewed a collection of death squad leaders that personally killed what I believe was around 1 million people. He eventually came down to focus on a couple and asked them if they could create a movie based on what they did during the 60s, during the massacre. And they were happy to oblige, and he started filming them and how they made the video. The three that were focused, the one in particular was Anwar Congo, a relatively elderly man now, but back then was considered a hero. In fact, was applauded for his discovery of finding a more humane way of slaughtering people, which was tying a metal wire around their neck and just strangling them to death. Less blood, less everything. He's the main focus, and who is kind of the main character in the movie that he makes, as well as directing it. Next is Adi Zolkadri, and he's a higher ranking general, I want to say, from the massacres. He took things a whole lot more seriously about killing the communists, and he recognizes that even though what he did back then was cruel, he shows no remorse, no feeling for it, and you see that in the film. And lastly, the other one, Herman Kodo, is a bit of the comic relief in this relatively not comic at all movie film. And how you can see this is that he just dresses up in drag as one of the characters in it. He just, while he kills people in just this feminine outfit, it just shows how he really is affected by this, which is not at all. Neo will come and present. Nope, Scott.
First off, I have a quote that Congo himself said. Killing is the worst crime that you can do, so the key is to find a way not to feel guilty. It's all about finding the right excuse. For example, if I'm asked to kill someone, if the composition is right, raise his hands in the air, then of course I'll do it. And from one perspective, it's not wrong. That's a perspective we must make ourselves believe. This character, you can go on. This character starts off in the beginning of the movie. He starts off as very proud of what he's done. He's telling stories of how he killed people and smiling about it, laughing about it. He has no regrets to the lives that he's taken. And he continues doing negative things around around the town, the village. In one instance, he actually goes to the marketplaces and practically robs people. What's the word?
Protection money?
Protection money. He actually gets protection money because he's actually part of the mobster in Indonesia. In the middle of the movie, it jumps from scenes of carelessness to scenes of regret. He starts to realize the things that he's done, and he starts to have the regrets. And the movie itself, it kind of twists your mind into not putting a face into this person. You're not exactly how you should feel about him. Are you supposed to be feeling sympathy for the things that he's done and how he's feeling now? Or are you supposed to feel angry that he keeps on doing these kinds of things? He's having nightmares about some of the things that he's done, where in one instance this guy is dressed up in this like black and white suit, and he wakes up, and like this is a part of the actual film that they filmed for the thing. It's not part of the looking at him. It's showing one of the nightmares that he's actually had, and it's he points to it and is extremely scared of what he is seeing, and then it cuts, and it doesn't really make any sense. But He visits the places that he's killed. That's the main thing that I want to get off in the middle of the film. At the end of the movie, he realizes the things that he's done. He feels extremely guilty, and the reason that he feels this way is he actually put himself into one of the people that he was torturing's positions. He was acting as one of the people that he killed, and he was tortured on film. He was beaten on film, and we'll actually watch his reaction to that later. But he understands the pains that he went through, that he put people through, and he revisits the spot that he killed earlier in the film, and he has a hard time being there. He starts to gag, he starts to almost throw up, and he's just overall unsure of how he should feel, but he definitely feels remorse.
I'm going to talk about cinematography in this film. I think it's a very interesting film in many ways because, like they said, we're not just watching a documentary, but we're watching the subjects of the documentary film their own reenactment of the killings that they made. And the director, Joshua Oppenheimer, he's not a very active figure in the film. He asked a few questions here and there. And that's what makes this an observational film. It's also ethnographic because it's not a Western film. It's about a third world country and just these terrible things that happen there. The director, as soon as a new character comes in, he has a title, which is their name, and like a little title about them. For most of the characters, it's executioner. This gives us, we have preconceived notions about how we should feel about these characters. With the title executioner, we feel like we should hate these characters, like these characters did horrible, bad things, which they did, and this film really makes us think twice about that because, as you will see, his reaction in the end, it's kind of heartbreaking. This is a shot from the film that they made. It's a very poetic film because a lot of the shots don't really fit together. It's sort of a mashup of a bunch of different genres. And I just want to show you the scene where he kind of realizes what he does, and the director asked him, or he makes this comment, and that makes this film, it changes the entire feel of the film.
Apakah orang yang kusiksa dulu itu rasanya seperti aku begini? Ah, itulah dia.
Yang tenang aja diperiksa dengar.
Tapi aku dapat merasakan ya perasaan mereka yang disiksa, karena jelas ya di sini nih marwah habis, harga diri kayak kehabisan, semua rasa takut itu datang. Pas waktu begini, nimbrung dia sekalian memasuki dalam tubuh itu, nimbrung sekalian masuk dalam tubuh.
Jelas apa yang dirasakan orang yang disiksa Bang Noir jauh lebih buruk dari ini, karena Bang Noir tahu ini hanya film. Mereka tahu bahwa mereka akan dibunuh.
Mudah-mudahan jangan nggak mau saya begini ya.
At the end of the clip there, he was talking about how he didn't want to remember what happened, and basically about how everything still gives him nightmares. And it's that one comment that the director makes that makes this a performative film, because just only at the end there does he alter what was happening in the film and how the characters react to it. This is what Scott was talking about earlier when he goes back to the place where he killed people. He was here earlier in the film. It was, the sun was shining, he was happy, he was dancing. But now, towards the end of the film, he sort of has almost like a mental breakdown, and he looks at all these tools that he used to kill people, the wire and the bags that he used to hide the bodies, and he feels, you can tell that he feels horrible about what he did.
Oppenheimer's message, he says that, in the quote, that he tried to understand why extreme violence that we hope would be unmanageable is not only the exact opposite, but also routinely performed. He tried to understand the moral vacuum that makes it possible for perpetrators of genocide to be celebrated on public television with cheers and smiles. This genocide is considered an act of heroism in Indonesia, according to the government. To the public, they have to recognize it as being heroes because they're terrified that they might get killed as well if they think otherwise. Oppenheimer sees this as an opportunity to show people just what could happen to the world if this was a widespread thing. But he also wants to tell us that it's still not just an act of killing to Indonesia, but it's also an act of killing on our part as well. Because we find out in the film that Anwar had a lot of his inspirations, his ways of killing people. He based everything of what he did off of American films. He was a huge gangster fan. He dressed up as one. That's how he found out the strangling of the wire. He found it out on the films and just started killing people off that way and was appraised for that. When we as Americans consider that appalling, we watch the film for the sake of it's fake, but when it's real, it just kind of off kilters you. But despite what he wanted to show, Anwar wasn't the first person he met up with for interviewing. In fact, it wasn't like the second or even the 10th. Anwar was his 41st death squad leader that he came to interview. And he stopped on this guy because he says that he found a possible hurt, at least on the surface of Anwar, and he wanted to see that. He wanted someone that was in the death squad to understand what they actually did. He shows throughout the film that he is such a tragic person from forming into that he realizes what he's done. He finally does at the end, and we see that. We also see that he is a hopeful person as well, showing that he's changing the way he's going to be, and possibly this is a new hope for Indonesia. Despite all of this, he still wanted to show Anwar and everyone else in the film that they were cold-blooded killers. Anwar at the beginning is, like we said, boasting about killing 1,000 people and just dancing about it. He says he wore jeans so it made him look cool. And at the end, that's not how he's feeling at all. As for the movie itself, and today, it has, upon further research, far more awards, far more nominees. At the end, most of the cast remains anonymous, and that was a kind of a key thing in it. When you see the credits, a very large section is remained anonymous, and it's kind of harrowing when you look at it, because it shows that the people couldn't reveal themselves, otherwise they'd get killed. And the film has tried to been stopped by the government itself for when it was released, but thanks to the modern age and internet and just underground films being passed around, most of Indonesia, as well as the rest of the world, has at least had a chance to watch this. Indonesia, the government, when they finally were taking a question upon it and were forced to, they were tasked to consider these war crimes. The act has not been yet passed, but it is getting a second look over it right now. Citations for the acts of killing. Any questions? Yes?
I was kind of touching on what you were referring to, but was he actually like beaten and tortured in the film, or did he just pretend to be?
He was pretending to be, however, there is like the blood and everything is fake makeup blood because he's making a movie for this. But it becomes real when they do a strangling scene and it just wraps around his neck once and he's just like, stop, stop.
Do you think they're able to, do you think these people actually had like a lack of empathy in them, or do you think they were kind of brainwashed by the notion of like being a cool gangster and being a hero?
Anwar said that he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he knew that he had to do it.
Okay.
So I think they were being pushed by the government to do that.
Comments? So, in terms of kind of this, just so you think about the future, in terms of your setup, this is a movie that requires a lot of explanation of the background before you get into it, and most of the people here, I don't think, knew that how this was an essay film until much later, right? So, can you guys articulate real quick why this is an essay film versus a documentary? Like a straight documentary the way you're talking about it?
It's pretty much the narrative spine that makes it an essay film. What happens in the documentary is it's very flat and it stays kind of like a learning experience. With this, the character in it is actually having the learning experience instead, and along with people that are watching the film.
Okay. I think what's important to note is that Josh Oppenheimer has a big hand in it, even though he's not mentioned much. He's the person who's setting up the filming situation for them to be able to do the reenactment. So he's kind of helping funnel that situation. So the question is he directing that? And that's been like the big fight about this movie. The documentary film people have been like arguing about for the past 2 years. Was Oppenheimer complicit in directing them, and are they acting when they're being remorseful? Like it's hard to know what reality is. These are cold-blooded killers, and there's definitely moments where you're like, wow, they do feel bad, but we know that this is all being set up as a farce. So it's very interesting in how it drags you emotionally between those various things. So if you were able to set that up, I think we would have understood your progression more, right? And it would also, like, some of the things that may have been good to talk about were the scenes where, even though they were filming it, the people who were there really weren't quite sure whether they were going to get killed or not. You know, like especially the scenes where they're reenacting like the burning of the village,
where the girl
kids
passes
are
out.
actually like flipping the fuck out because they actually think that they may actually get killed because these people are known for actually killing people and they know that. So are they pretending to film and they really are going to kill us? And those kind of moments of is this reality, is this film, are probably the most poignant things. And you really should kind of, that's just a thing for me. You think you guys did a good job otherwise. You presented a lot of material, so I don't want you to feel bad. But that's like a really poignant thing that you really should have put in there, right? I mean, that those were the scenes that made the movie. And so, yeah. Try to think about it, okay? All right, next group gets set up.